Well, we've now been the 48 hours for the first soak, so we're going to go ahead and the next step is to get the four hides out of the solution. We're going to wring them out / rinse them out so that we can work with them to flesh them. So this will be interesting to see how easily or how well this goes. So here they are. We haven't taken them out yet, but you can see they've changed to quite a white color from what they were. And the last time we stirred them, keeping in mind you're supposed to stir these basically 2 times in a 24-hour period, we noticed they were fairly soft. So we're going to go ahead, get these out, and see what we've got to work with. Well, I've already cheated a little bit, and I have fleshed 2 out just to see how it goes. Before we actually film this, but it's going really well, and I'll kind of jump you right into it with a couple little tricks, I guess, that we used or we figured on using really early on to make this go really fast. So trick number 1 is we're doing this over the sink because it's a little bit messy, not terrible by any means, but you can see the 2 skins are still here. Now really the only actual tool for this is a butter knife. And you can kind of see it there. This butter knife does have the really tiny little teeth on the end. You do want that because it gives you a little bit of purchase when you're fleshing. Makes it a little bit easier. The other thing, which this is not the best implement for this, but we're using this 2x4. And because these are case skinned, or basically you put them over one end and you've got something quite solid right in behind the skin. Makes a big difference trying to get what little bit of flesh is left on here. Now, for these ones, we're just using a 2x4 that was down in the basement. This is not ideal because we should shape this a little bit for future rabbits so that it's not quite so hard on them. But it does work for now. It's a little abrasive on the fur. So anyways, that's really it. It's very basic, very simple, and with this method it seems to be going really well. So here's one of the skins. As we said, they're kind of like a tube, right? The case skinning. So you can see the little bits of flesh that have to come off here. There's quite a bit. Well, I shouldn't say quite a bit, but there is a bunch. So what I'm going to do first, you can wet these to keep them kind of supple. You don't want them drying out too much, but I'm going to wring it out a little bit. This is just water, not the solution. And then, as I say, this is not ideal because it's a little hard on the fur, being square. But try to do this as best as possible. It's a little hard to show this, but we put the wood in underneath. And just kind of bringing it down over, so you've got something to kind of work with, and you can move this around on the wood as well if you need to. So I'm going to start this way. So you've got your knife. What this allows you to do is hold a little bit, and all you're doing is scraping. You'll see your flesh bits come off. Now I'm putting them off to the side because these have been chemically tanned, so we're not going to feed them to anything. But that's about the difficulty here of the process. Some of it will peel a little bit too. And apparently the cats think that they want to eat it.
And the cats all think it's dinner time.
And it's not.
Well, now, that's the one I ripped.
No, they're all a little thin. There are parts on the rabbit furs that are quite thin. The belly and around the legs seems to be quite thin. It kind of is what it is. You still want to try to clean that up a little bit because you'll see there is some flesh there. but at the same time, it's just going to be what it's going to be. Which really is a point about homesteading in general, is you may not be able to do this perfect. Most of us aren't going to be world-class tanners, professional grade tanners. This is just trying to find a use for something that otherwise would be a waste product. And even if you can get a little bit out of it, that's great. But anyways, you can go both ways. You just want it to be kind of tight-ish. And you just kind of, like I say, there, it's coming pretty good. It'll peel off, yep. Sometimes you can peel it like that. But like I say, the nice part with this is you probably could use other knives, but if you don't have anything special, this works really well because it has enough teeth to grab, but basically, or generally speaking, not enough of a serrated edge to do too much damage outside of maybe on some of those thinner bits. So I'm going to kind of keep going here on this one and get it cleaned up. So this is the back, which is where sort of the nicest fur is on the rabbit, generally. And this is kind of the butt end, for lack of a better way to put it. And you can see I've kind of come along here and just loosened this up by hand, which has actually gone pretty good. But some of this, you have to be a little careful because there are some thin patches as you get around to where the legs are, kind of on both sides here. But some of this will just kind of come off fairly well on its own with this particular tanning method, which is kind of nice. Like I say, you want to be a little careful, but see, a lot of that's just coming off on its own. That's alright if you rip the part that you're fleshing off, because that's a discard basically. You just don't want to rip the actual hide itself if you can help it. But that's quite a good sized area here that we're getting the flesh off of. So anyways, I'm going to keep going on this, a combination of hand peeling when I can and scraping when I need to, and we'll come back when we've got it all kind of ready to go. Alright, well, this fur, or this pelt, is basically ready to go back into the solution. And you can see this one in the back, I haven't even started yet. Hopefully you can kind of see the difference. This is quite white, which is something we understand the aluminum sulfide treatment tends to do to the hides, but it's really quite free of all the little fleshy bits, which is what you want to get rid of. Now, yeah, as you see, there's the odd little piece, and some of those are loose, but rabbit's not exactly the same as some of the other fur bearers where you've got a lot to scrape off. There's not too much to the skin, relatively speaking. There's not a lot of fat. I mean, domestic rabbits, there's a lot more fat than wild ones, but the skin's pretty thin, relatively speaking. So this is kind of just an exercise to get what's obvious off. This one was in pretty good shape. It didn't have any of the really black marks. I'll flip it over here though. Show you the belly. So as I was saying, there are parts of the rabbit that are a bit thinner, and this is the belly, and you can kind of see the difference in the color. Not that this pelt was in bad shape by any means, but you can just see, yeah, the fur is not equal across the whole body, which makes sense. And you can also see down here, this is the area where I was saying was really quite thin. So you can see I have ripped a bit. In all fairness, this is not likely part of the pelt that you're actually going to functionally be able to use for very much. So just be careful when you're working, because the better, or the fewer rips you can get, the better. But yeah, as I say, this one is ready to go in. Last rabbit is fleshed out. I wanted to show here, these two spots are areas this won't tan nice, because what essentially these are is there's blood flow to those. This rabbit was at least partially basically molting for whatever reason. And we actually did lose a piece of it because as I was fleshing, it just was kind of falling apart. So I just cut that piece out. I'm going to leave these in for now, but realistically this area is probably no good. But the back and whatnot should still be decent, so we're going to get it in the solution and come back in 7 days.
Now that Chris is done with his, what would you call that? Fleshing of the rabbit fur, we now have to put that back into our pickling or brine solution for another 7 days. Now the solution, you should have saved that when you removed the hides in order to do the fleshing. So you just save that liquid, but we're going to add the same again. We're going to add 1 cup of coarse sea salt and 1 cup of aluminum sulfate. So we're going to get busy on that so that those furs can get right back into their pickle, because the quicker we get that done, the quicker we can get to the fun part. So there's our first one, fleshed and ready to go into the brine again. Definitely, I would say, much nicer than the egg tanning, but we'll discuss that more as we get all of them done. But into the water it goes. You do them one at a time, and you want to just kind of stir them around so that that water gets right into the fur and everything else on the hide. We've kind of made it a little bit more difficult by leaving them in the tube shape. But anyways, we didn't slice in the belly. We left them fully circular because we're trying that when we stretch them to see if it's a little easier. But that's the first one in, and basically same process, one at a time, stir them in, and once you got them all in there, put your lid lightly on top and stir them twice every day for 7 days.